We start with a man being shot and beaten and left in a ditch covered by cardboard. The next day, we have Jack Reacher walking to a town named Margrave, Georgia, and sees a man roasting his girl. Reacher stares at him and intimidates the man to rethink his action. The man apologizes and leaves. Reacher is in a diner, but right before he tries the pie, he is stopped by police and arrested for a crime. Chief Detective Oscar Finley brings Reacher to an empty room to ask Reacher some questions. Reacher doesn't say anything at first. Finally, he says something, but to deny the crime he is accused of, and how the victim was taken down. Due to Reacher being the prime suspect, he was put in the hole. Finley and Roscoe Conklin visits Paul Hubble because his cell phone number was found at the crime scene. A black sedan shows up by Hubble's house, and Hubble admits to the crime, but Finley doesn't believe Hubble. They bring Hubble and lock him up. Finley tells Reacher to go with him, but Reacher denies because he wants his zip ties off before going. Reacher thinks Dwight Stevenson might have something related to Hubble due to the longer eye contact, and profiles Finlay to show his intelligence. Finlay calls Stevenson to his office, and Reacher both questions Stevenson. Stevenson explains that they had a family gathering and Hubble was there, so there should be no way for Hubble to commit the crime. So Finlay sends Reacher and Hubble to jail to scare Hubble into giving up some information. At the jail site, Officer Tanner Spivey tries to strip search Reacher, but Reacher denies him due to his knowledge about the law and guns, and threatens Spivey if he still wants to try. Reacher and Hubble were sent to Gen Pop. JD and his men show up to take Hubble's item and was about to get some head, but Reacher stepped up and established himself as Top G, not to be messed with. Hubble explains to Reacher what he is forced to do, and if Hubble crosses the mastermind, he will be nailed to the wall in front of his family. They go to a shower room to lure out all the people who were sent after them. Reacher beats them all up until the guards come and move them to a safer location. Reacher suspects that Spivey set them up. In the morning, they were both freed, and Roscoe picked up Reacher. It was all thanks to Roscoe to get them free so quick. Ever since Kleiner came to the town 5 years ago and set up his company at Margrave, dealing with real estate, trucking, chemicals, and mechanical parts, in exchange, Kleiner got a sweet deal for some land, and Kleiner pours money into the town. Kleiner has a son named KJ, and KJ warns Reacher to watch his back. Reacher was going to go on a date with Roscoe, but a dead body was found, so the date was cancelled. And Reacher wanted to leave, but Finley demands Reacher to help with the investigation. We find out that Reacher's brother was the first victim. Reacher states,
I guess I'll find everybody responsible and kill every last one of them.
Reacher and Roscoe investigates Hubble, but he isn't there, so Reacher makes an excuse to search the house and notices a burr on Hubble's shoes. Reacher theorizes the attacker in jail were after the wrong guy and attacked Reacher because he was wearing sunglasses and Hubble wasn't wearing anything. They go to Joe's crime scene to see if the burr grows there, and then they reenact what happened at the crime scene. At the same night, another death happened. We find out it was Police Chief Morrison who was taken out. Reacher remembers what Hubble told him and asks if Morrison was nailed to the wall, and he was. Reacher assumes Morrison was a dirty cop and he was taken out to be made as an example if they mess up. At the town hall meeting, Mayor Teal decides to make himself chief of police and the people get heated. Accusations were tossed around, mainly at Reacher, but Kleiner vouched for Reacher because he had an alibi. Reacher thinks Teal and Kleiner are dirty and gets Finley to get protection for Hubble's family. So Finley asks Picard, who is in FBI, to help. Mosley warns Reacher that 2 Spanish men are looking for him. Reacher tries to set up Spivey, but Spivey knows, so he gets 2 Spanish men to take him in, but Reacher fights back. They pull out their knives and continue fighting until police shows up and they all run off. Reacher goes back to where Finley and Roscoe are at and explains the situation to them. Roscoe tells Reacher that Joe works for the Secret Service and they head out to a bar to have their date. After a dance at the bar, it starts pouring and they go to a motel to stay the night. In the morning, they head back to Roscoe's place and notice someone has broken in. There wasn't anyone there anymore, but a carving of "See you soon," and Reacher says,
I'm really gonna need a gun.
Roscoe lends Reacher her family's precious Desert Eagle. Before leaving, Reacher tests the gun and gives a speech.
Never trust a weapon you haven't personally test fired.
Jasper ID'd the second victim as Pete Jobling, working as a trucker. They find it odd that a fancy firm defended Pete for a traffic violation turned to disorderly conduct. Molly Beth Gordon from Secret Service calls Roscoe and they tell Molly that Joe is dead. And Molly tells them that Joe was working for the anti-counterfeiting department. So Roscoe pretends to listen to Teal's order. Finley visits Spivey to find no one, but a call log is calling Kleiner. The neighbor calls the cop on Finley, and Finley was taken in after getting knocked out. Roscoe had to bail Finley out from another county. Reacher visits the firm to get information on Pete. They meet up at a BBQ place to relay the information they found. They find Kleiner very suspicious because all the information leads to him, so they pay Kleiner a visit. As they walk in, Reacher notices deerheads hang up, so they must have a skilled marksman. Kleiner explains why he helped Pete with legal fees and gets under Finley's skin, but Finley isn't having it and fires back with threats, and Kleiner asks them to leave. Reacher tells them,
I'm gonna uncover this whole operation, then run it to the ground.
because he had a lot of free time to do it. KJ tells Roscoe why Reacher was let go because he took out a couple of civilians in Baghdad, and Roscoe refused to listen. Finley learns that Hubble wasn't working at the currency department for a whole year. Reacher finds out that Spivey skipped town with 2 Spanish men. Reacher notices that he's being followed, so he sets them up and takes them out before the Spanish men do. After taking them out, Reacher cleans his mess and finds Spivey in the back of their trunk. They meet up at a ditch where a burned SUV was hidden, and they deducted that it might have been Joe's car. Reacher tells Roscoe what happened in Baghdad, where a couple of adults were beating the kids that Reacher see every day. And Reacher gives the adults some options, but they chose to seek revenge. Reacher was ready for the ambush and took them out quickly. They go to the airport to ditch the bodies there, but before leaving, Reacher is fixated about the animal feed. At the hotel, Reacher fortifies the room, and Molly calls him to give them some information. They visit Pete's place and find an empty aircon box, and Reacher thinks that the counterfeit money comes from South America, and Pete brings it to Margrave. Picard gives them information about where Joe stayed. When they reach the motel, they find out that someone beat them to it, but Reacher believes that Joe is smarter than that and may leave the info somewhere else. When they find the info, they're shot at. They try to escape the gunman, but Reacher uses himself as bait to keep Roscoe safe. Reacher heads into an abandoned building, and the car gets trapped, so Reacher takes one of the gunmen's out, before running away again and attacking the other gunman. The gunman gets the upper hand and aims his gun at Reacher, but Roscoe comes in to save the day, and takes out the gunman. They meet up at a farmhouse to decode Joe's note, and then they start calling the numbers. Reacher thinks that the animal feed is still linked after calling the numbers, and he calls Neagley because he trusts her with his life, and tells her to research the things that he needed. They go meet Molly at the train station, but she goes missing. Reacher sees her briefcase on the tracks, and finds her dying there from a stab wound. This is it for part 1. Part 2 will come sometimes later. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.